There are a couple things that I know for sure. And one is that I'm Jim LePan, and I know that you're John Koenig.
I seem to be.
And continue to be John Koenig. Welcome back, John, for another episode here.
Good to be back.
John and I have been talking about John's book, My Autobiographies. And if you could show us the cover of that, that's great.
This, by the way,
as you can see,
that's me in this life. And this one here's me as my shaman. And that's me as my current wife's wife, Lena.
Okay. It's funny that you had touched on that, because I want to say that and we're talking about past lives, past life regressions. John's book, Autobiographies, is about several of his past lives. I had a past life regression where I was a Native American woman. And in this one, I did not have a untimely or violent death. But what happened was that I had a younger sister, and we were just going through life. And there was this Indian guy that was there, and he was interested in me. But I just, I didn't want to commit and just kind of let that go. And down the road, my sister ended up becoming married to him and having a family. So as I got older, I looked at my life and I saw that really could have been my life, but it wasn't. And not because of my sister, but because of me, that I had passed by and not taken advantage of a situation. And it was my problem that I had. And where that came from coming into my mind, I have no idea, except for the fact that I had that as a past life. I mean, I don't know Native American people. I don't know people that had that particular story. So it's not like I had a dream about, I was watching a show on cowboys and I had a dream about cowboys. It's not like that at all. And certainly, what do you think, John, about when you have a past life regression? Does it surprise you or amaze you sometimes as to what topics or what things come into it?
You can't go into this with expectations. If you do, you're not going to get a good value or even an experience at all. But
Right.
in that life of yours, the lesson of the road less traveled, that we make choices in life. I remember when I was a kid in this life, I was in a band, I played the clarinet, and the bass drummer, didn't show up. And I was not great at clarinet. And the teacher asked me if I would play the drums, and I was too shy. And so I declined. And he said to me, "You're missing an opportunity you're going to regret the rest of your life." But now at my advanced age, but that is the thing, and that happened to you when you had this guy,
Sure.
this brain you were interested in.
Yeah.
You didn't go for it, and you ended that life with regret.
With that regret, that could have been my life.
That's really a question. You never know what you're going to bump into if you're doing it properly.
Right.
People that do what I do for a living, sometimes get people, and they believe they were Cleopatra.
Right.
So they will go into a regression, and they will twist it. So they will make it be Cleopatra. And that's a whole different thing. And I hate when that happens. You want somebody to go in and say, even if you have an intention, you forget the intention and let whatever is there be there.
Yes. Some people say that it's really our soul that decides what life we're going to look at. That we as humans in this life, we're not the ones in charge of that, of what happens when we're having the regression, that it's being chosen for us to learn something about. And I think that's a wonderful thought.
I would say this, that language that most everybody does, my soul. I believe who we are is soul.
Okay.
That who we are literally is soul. And this stuff is like a costume that we wear, an habit.
Okay.
And we do make the decision before birth.
Right.
And that's a fascinating way to look at life. If you chose, I'm sure you know a lot of people, I certainly do, that see themselves as victims.
Yes.
For this happened to me, whatever it is. And I'm not saying life isn't hard. Life is hard. But when you look at things from the point of view of, I chose this, I chose these challenges, I chose these parents, I chose this race, this level of health, whatever, it gives you a whole different access to how to live, I think.
Absolutely. I have interviewed a fellow that I haven't published the interview yet, but his name is David Sewage. And he interviewed over a period of years. At the time he wrote the book, God Took My Clothes, he had interviewed 700 people. Now it's 1,200 people and climbing. And he talks about these people that have had near-death experiences. They tell him what they themselves experienced. This is not coming from somewhere way out. This is from a person that's sitting there saying, I had this near-death experience and this is what happened. And they talk about just what you were saying. They talk about going in the life in between lives. They talk about having an opportunity to decide what lessons they want to learn in the next life and selecting what family they want to go into and what issues they want to solve. And I look at some people that have nothing but luck, and then I look at people that have nothing but problems. They just have one problem after another. It doesn't stop. And I think to myself, I feel a lot better anyway as a human saying they asked for that. But there's got to be a lesson being learned there.
I believe so. And I think that the problem every religion has is how do you explain why bad things happen to otherwise good people?
Right.
In my opinion, no religion has an adequate answer. If you believe in a loving, good God, well, why would a child be born who dies, 18 days later? Why would the parents be put through that? I have not known any religious leader who's able to explain that in any way except God's mysterious. Well, what if you chose, I'm going to incarnate as a baby who dies in 18 days to fulfill something in me, but also to give my parents their karmic lesson of having a child that they're devastated by the child's death. And to me, it clears up a lot of questions, theological questions that all religions try to address.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And let's talk a little bit more about some of the lives that you had that you showed in your book, My Autobiographies. There is one guy who's a really awful guy, and he's a son of a wealthy...
My rapist.
Yeah, rapist. Can you imagine murder? I've heard people say we're not always great people in these past lives, but I haven't so far had one of those people. I've been a victim of bad people, but I haven't been a bad person. And so tell us, what was the life and how did you feel about it?
God, we don't experience that, Rose. Thank you for picking that one. I was hoping you would bring that one up. He was privileged and he thought he could do whatever he wanted. And he had molested and raped a couple of lower class women. He was a wealthy rancher's son. So one day he's walking around on a horse and he finds this woman and he rapes her. And she is a landowner's daughter. And she says she's going to get her brothers and they're going to kill me. And what he did is he fought with her. He threw her down. She hit her head and she died. And Zeke was his name. Well, when you do this work, the facilitator will say, "Do you get a name?" And I got Zeke and Ezekiel, I guess it was. And he's not very bright. And he hides. He goes, and he doesn't hide like I'm going to go to Mexico. He goes to the next county and spends his life as a recluse. He's afraid of facing the consequences. And he survives by doing odd jobs for people. And what I got out of that, he is unrecognizable. His huge beard, he stinks. And he lives alone. His whole life is alone. And what I got out of that was the tendency I have to isolate. The issue of karma, I look at karma not in the sense of you're being punished for being a murderer, but in the sense of you have a lesson to learn. And the lesson I got is about being known, about speaking my truth. And for years and years, I hid a lot of who I am, for whatever reason. And that was Zeke's legacy. You can't let people know who you are. That was the theme of his life. Like your theme of one of yours was, you have to take care of other people as well.
Right.
With Zeke's, he ended his life with, you can't let anybody know who you are. and I brought that into this life. Brother,
What?
Brother Thomas's was, I suppose, people will betray you, or you can't trust. Maybe it was you can't trust what you're told. The ideals of your community, that it's fraudulent, and that had me into this life as a questioner, maybe.
Okay. As a questioner, did you say?
As a questioner, because Brother Thomas believed it all. He believed
Oh,
everything about his faith. And he believed that everybody that he, like his abbot, was good and honorable, and they were. But he left that thing with everything I believed was false. And I would say that maybe Zeke's was you can't trust anybody to know you. His was you can't trust what you're told. It's fraudulent. It's a lie.
wow. Wow. They're pretty harsh, both of
Yeah.
those.
Well, everybody's life. My book is My Autobiographies. I think I have 14 I've had 31 that I've counted so far. But anybody could write their autobiographies. You could. They just go through
Yeah.
your lives and note what they were and what you left the life with, and what you brought into this life. When we started, I picked one of my cards from my deck,
Oh, yes.
that
Yes.
the unexamined life isn't worth living. But when you do this work, it's multidimensional. It's not this life. It goes back into, like the way a river gets streams from the mountains that go into it. From
Right.
the streams that created who you are.
Well, that's a very interesting analogy, John. I hadn't really thought of that. And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, the stream continues on. It's not that little stream anymore. It's it's a
And
river, got a different
you
identity.
shared too. The guy
And
that can't all be about me, and the woman. The opportunities come, and you have a choice. You take advantage of them, or you let it go. And
right,
regret.
right.
That's
Well,
very stuff. It's a different way of thinking about life.
it is fascinating. There are a couple of other of your lives that I want to talk about. Later in the book, you talk about that you feel strongly that you can take the energies of these past lives and bring them into this life. Like the wonder, I'm reading from my notes, wonder and curiosity of the shaman,
Right.
the coping mechanisms of Robbie the slave. These lives of yours, those humans had to cope with different things. And you mentioned that you bring many of those or those things to your current life. Could you talk about that a little bit,
Well,
please?
some of them, with the image of the stream and the river, are just who I am. But you also can bring attributes into this life.
Okay.
And I had a thing recently, and the only life that I could touch was, I was the sergeant major in the British military at the time when they were occupied and fighting with India, taking over India. And he had a lot of flaws, but he was bold. He was brassy. And I was able to bring that in. The way I first got into this was, I was in a training, and the facilitator said, you can do this, you can break. And the facilitator, again, that name David Quigley, says he learned how to play the piano by accessing being a harpsichordist, at a royal court. And he brought that ability to piano playing.
Interesting.
And so he expressed this in the training. And I said, okay, he said, I want to work on leadership. And I'm a male in this life. And my vision of leadership is over the top boys. And so I go back and I find myself as a mother of 3 boys, and they're successful builders in Mideast. They build palaces, they build public buildings, and I am their mother and I am their coach. It was
Okay.
a feminine idea of leadership, supportive, nurturing, rather than pushing or challenging. And again, these things often are dramatic, but I think it did help me in my work, which is about empowering people rather than anything that, you might pushing them. She has the experience, and this past, I've had many people in my office in absolute tears. People drown in my office. I've had people do all kinds of things. And her youngest son dies. And for the rest of her life was broken. But that wasn't the essential point in her life. What I pulled out of that life was leadership.
I had a life where I was the oldest of three. I was a male. I had a younger brother and a younger sister. This was in the United States in the frontier town, something like that. And the middle child died in a wagon accident.
Your brother.
My brother, yes. He died in that accident. And the real thing that I took out of it was that I my sister and I formed our own little family.
Yeah.
The mother couldn't cope with it. The father couldn't cope with it. But here was my sister and I, and we just had to live. We there's nowhere to go. We were young. We were trying to grow up, and we found a way to do it. The two of us. And I think now that I think is a leadership. That's courage, right? And but very very interesting
We didn't
that
talk about this
that came up.
before. I picked one of my oracle cards. I created an oracle deck,
Oh right,
and
right.
I picked the card which was resourcefulness.
Okay.
What you did in that life is you were resourceful.
Yeah.
You made it work.
Yeah. We had, it's like God of necessity is the mother of invention. We just we had to make it, and we did. And that was part of my experience too, was we did okay.
You survived, and you
We survived, and
thrived.
went on to live lives, good lives. So yeah, very, very interesting. And now let's talk a little bit about your Oracle deck. There are tarot card decks. That's what we call a deck. Is like a deck of cards kind of thing. And there's a different type of cards that are inspirational kind of a cards. And now yours is kind of along those lines, right, John? Kind of a inspirational group.
Yeah,
Would you say or no?
educational. The way
Educational.
I
Okay.
do every deck that's created, forgetting the tarot, even that though is created by an individual, reflects that individual's worldview. What I did to create this deck is I went on AI. I actually used ChatGPT.
Okay.
Earlier, had to investigate 64 principles that humanity has to master. The common agreements between all philosophies, all religions, all self-help movements.
Now say that again. The
64
64
principles that
principles.
humanity has to master if we're to evolve. One of my principles, it's in the autobiographies, that humanity, we're evolving into a new species almost, if not new species.
Okay.
So what are the principles that humans have to master as an aggregate and as individuals to give me these 64 principles? And out came 64 principles. And I turned each of them into a card. So when you work with this deck, you're basically training yourself on what the world as thinkers believe humanity has to incorporate. The Oracle deck, as opposed to a book, you can read it a book, but the Oracle deck allows the universe to school you. Right?
Okay.
You pick a card, and that's your card for the day. The
right.
first interview we did, I picked the mirror,
Yep.
self-reflection. And there's a quote from Socrates.
Okay.
The unexamined life isn't worth living. The best thinkers of humanity believe self-knowledge is important. To
Okay.
know yourself if you're going to evolve. And the other one I picked for today's, I picked it before the interviews, was resourcefulness. If
Okay.
you're going to resolve, I don't have the picture of here, but the lines, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And if you
Right.
want to evolve, you got to play the ball where it lays.
Yes.
If it
Yes.
lays in the rough, it's in the rough.
That's it. Go with that.
Go with
That's
that.
what.
But by using either a random number generator or shuffling, you let whatever it creates this pick. Now, why that's different from an oracle deck that came out of one person's mind is if you do that, you're still in that person's worldview. With my deck,
Okay.
you're in the view of humanity.
I
Person's
see.
minds of humanity, not John Koenig.
Okay. That's where your deck differs.
Completely different. Absolutely
Completely
What?
different. These are principles. Is that right?
principles. Sure.
Principles that we
is the challenges humanity has to master as individuals and an aggregate to
to
invest
evolve.
and to evolve. And we asked
Okay.
ChatGPT to investigate all religion, philosophy, self-help movements,
Okay.
and a few other things. To put
So this isn't the Christian thing. This isn't the Buddhist or the Hindu. It's all.
It's all. And I double checked it. I did it again, and I came up with these 64 principles. I added 2 of my own, and I make it clear that you don't have to use the 2 of mine. Oh, here's the today's.
Okay, that's right.
Like as you eliminate 2 of my own, and one of them, I said, okay, sometimes you need just a rest. That's why one of them I added was a day off.
Okay.
So, and this is the most productive one. Sometimes I get this, and it says just enjoy. You can't always be working on yourself.
No.
The other one is the day you die. And you're invited with this card to live as if today is your last day. And it's a very interesting way to live. What if this is the end of it? What is really important to you to live with it? Now, I added those 2. And you can do the deck without those. And frankly, sometimes I do the deck without those. But, the 64 principles are really what the deck is. And these are just 2 I added. I call them bonus cards.
Okay. And I think it's very interesting that you help to flesh out the ideas of these, because there is a little text, right? You have a
I wrote them
workbook.
of each of them.
Could you show us the workbook, please, John, if you have that?
The
near
workbook
you?
is going to appear reversed because this is video. But
Actually, it reads just
does
right.
it read just right?
Well, it reads right from my standpoint.
Wonderful.
So when it shows, it won't.
Okay, good.
Yeah, the universal mind map.
Oracle meditation system for personal transformation. Best minds of humanity. And you get, they school you. I give a link to a random number generator.
Okay.
That's used by lotteries. It's a true random number generator. And it comes from atmospheric conditions, and it's very interesting technology. And I allow the universe to tell me what to look at on a daily basis. And it is always, I did a Kickstarter, and I funded it within 36 hours. And everybody, and I did interviews with people. I had a panel. I had 78 or so people that were part of my beta group. And it's transformative because you're looking at what humanity has to offer. Now, I did write the text. I'm very clear that that's my perspective.
Okay.
If somebody else wrote the text of these 64 principles, it would be quite different. So,
right.
That's John.
Right. But the principles are those stated by others than you, except for those 2 cards. Okay.
It's like forgiveness. The best minds of humanity will agree that if you want to evolve, you have to forgive. You don't see anybody saying you got to get revenge. Of the best minds of humanity, religions, philosophies, psychologies, think forgiveness is a great virtue. Another one is empowerment. That if you want to evolve, you have to empower others. Honesty.
Guess spite's not in there.
No, spite is not. Right. There's minds of humanity come with different points of view. Let me see if I can look at them completely randomly.
Yeah, that would be nice. Thanks.
The phoenix rising. That when there's I think it's a Japanese expression, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Yeah, you have to be willing to reinvent yourself. Here's one. Patience. The best minds of humanity think if you want to evolve, you have to cultivate your patience. Self-control. If you want to evolve, you've got to control yourself.
I couldn't agree more.
Here's a lovely one. Self-compassion.
Boy, that's a big
Be
one.
nice to yourself.
That's not so easy sometimes.
No, not at all. And drop the rock. We carry stuff. That was a bad word. We carry stuff from the past. The best part of humanity think you need to let it go.
Oh, wait, here, let's stop on that for a second. So the best minds of humanity think that we got to stop thinking about past problems. Is that it? Or past issues or past wrongs?
Or see what the text is. But I think the best wisdom humanity's come up with is what they call the serenity prayer, where you ask for the serenity to accept the things you can't change. The best minds of humanity believe you have to live in the present. And when you're going along living regretting the past, trying to change the past. The best minds of humanity think that's stupid. You need to drop the rock. You need to let go of it. And that includes old resentments, but that also includes old limitations, ways of thinking about yourself. I know so many people, I'm sure you do, who carry the past around with regret.
Oh yes,
and
talk about it
and guilt,
constantly
and talking
about
about
things that went
should
wrong
have.
4 years ago. We're talking about today. Whoops, sorry. Things that went wrong 4 years ago. We're talking about it today. Why? What? Let's go on. Let's move on. Yeah.
Self-compassion. Nobody I know does this perfectly.
No, it's a tough one.
And it's a constant, battle, letting go of the past, regret, shame from the past, guilt, all that stuff.
If I were a person that was listening to this episode of the podcast, John, and I wanted to get my hands on this Oracle deck or the workbook or whatever, what's the best way for me to do
it's on Amazon. The deck itself is not on Amazon. I couldn't figure out a way to get this thing on Amazon.
Okay.
But the guidebook is all you need. I have a link to a random number generator. I think,
and the card, the pictures that are in the cards are in the workbook.
The cards are nice, and people like the cards. And if you go into Amazon and you look Universal Mind Map Oracle Meditation System, the book tells you how to get the cards. I've got a web.
Let's say that a little slower, if you would. Universal Mind Map
Oracle Meditation System.
Oracle Meditation.
On Amazon.com. And it includes instructions to go to our webpage where you can order the deck if you want the deck as well. And most people like the deck, and you shuffle. That's the way people typically use these cards.
I love the idea that this is the best we as humanity have got to offer. This is right, and I love that all gathered together with that's
and you let the universe
school you. Good at.
You let the universe school you through random selection. And in a world where I believe there are no coincidences, that everything is part of divine plan. And I'm not saying that you're going to love it all. There's one card I hate getting, which is environmental consciousness. Best minds of humanity think we should be environmentally conscious to take care of the planet. And I hate when I get that, because what am I going to do? Recycle more properly? But nonetheless, to be conscious of it, to be aware of it.
Right.
And I take action sometimes. So I get one of these things, like having compassion for other people, and it'll ask you, in my narrative, who do you know who needs help? And I'll reach out to somebody, only because I picked the card that morning.
Right. It helps remind you of those very, very important concepts.
That nobody would debate. Nobody would argue. Just picking one randomly here. Divine union. Humanity believes that we need to connect with something bigger than us.
Yes.
Divine union. I don't think it's possible to argue that these aren't worthy things, because humanity has figured it out. Our best minds have come to. You don't find spite. You don't find greed. You don't find trying to be the biggest guy in the totem pole.
Right. Bullying. It's not in there.
All of that stuff.
And now, real quick then, we're just running out of time here, but I wanted to touch base on one thing that you talked about. You touched on it earlier, and that is Homo Deus. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Homo Deus.
And what's that all about, John?
That's the new species.
The new species, okay.
Carol Louis, Jim and I know, did this thing. And I found myself, you did a regression, I found myself in a very primitive tribe. Pre-human. And along came, as I know I'm pre-human, and I don't think clearly, I don't think in words, and suddenly we're aware of aliens. Now this is as weird as I'm going to get, and again, I'm not going to swear to this, but there are these aliens, and they talk about me, then they touch me, and I become different. I become one of the first Homo sapiens. And my family at the point are still the other species. I'm different. I got the sense there were 10,000 of us on the planet who were chosen to be the evolvers. And I think something like that will happen. Jesus Christ. People look at Jesus Christ, and I look at him as being one of the first, perhaps, of the new species. It includes things like ability to heal, clairvoyance, to telepathy, even psychokinesis, that I think humanity is becoming co-creators with deity. And I think that's what our path is. And this deck is designed to help you get there.
I think that we are co-creators and got to live every day creating some goodness here because we're part of the overall consciousness here, and it's our job to keep working
Doing
on
your
it.
podcast, which is part of
Yeah,
that.
thanks. Thanks.
They talk about people like that as light workers, people who work to advance humanity.
I like that. I like that. And John, I really appreciate you coming and talking with me and doing 2 episodes. It's a big commitment, and I thank you. And I'm so glad we got a chance to talk about not only your book, but the oracle cards. And I think your abilities as a communicator is being really, really demonstrated in a big way. And I think you should feel very good about it. And I thank you.
And I'm looking forward to seeing you in Carol Louise Reincarnation Symposium.
Absolutely.
What a light worker.
Oh,
Nod
yes.
to Carol. The work she's done at bringing people together, to me, is amazing.
Yes, yes. She has developed quite a wonderful group of people that are just advanced.
It's not about money. Carol is not doing this about money.
Not for money. No. No. Well, thank you very much, John.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.